It is with great pleasure that I introduce all of you to Larry Goldberg, a new guy.
Yeah, I'm no stranger to them. Come on.
Yeah.
They're tired of me already. They're
No, no, that'll never
gonna
happen.
fire me.
Not a chance, not a chance. Well, Larry, we were just talking that the stock went down near the end of the day, dropped like $6, $5 right at the close, and it was kind of like what? Because the rest of the market was finally moving up and trying to get back in the green. But Tesla, no, it went down. So there was a few pieces of news near the end of the day. Let's start with the the one that I think is hopefully going to have the least long-term impact, but might be playing havoc for a day or two, or maybe a few days. So this was a story that started early this morning, but it got more legs as the day went on because the New York Times, near
Oh,
the end of the day, picked it up. I know, picked it up and said that Elon has been using more drugs lately. And it wasn't just a glass of vino. So we know about some of the stuff, but in this list of things, it was some ecstasy and some mushrooms and some other things. Now, in the Silicon Valley, my understanding is that mushrooms are the drug of choice for everybody, especially if they're taken in micro doses, and that's the hot way to go right now. Anyway, do you know anything about this? Do you have any thoughts about this? Are you concerned about this? What do you think about this story?
if the New York Times picked it up, I don't believe it.
Okay.
Unless Elon confirms it, I don't believe it. I did watch Elon's farewell in the Oval Office.
Uh-huh.
I think that if stories like this had got to Trump, there would have been hell to pay, but I may be wrong. I just don't believe it. Honestly, I don't credit anything they say anymore. Anything. I don't credit a damn thing they say in the New York Times.
Well, the New York Times was quoting Bloomberg.
I That's worse. Actually, I thought Bloomberg was quoting New York Times. I'm a subscriber to Bloomberg. I don't know why I am anymore. I'm going to give it up. I'm a subscriber to Bloomberg, and Bloomberg carried the story,
Yeah,
but the New York Times carried the story. Now, it's quite possible that they were bouncing
right.
between each other, but actually, I think I may be able to pull it up while we talk and check it out. But I'm almost certain that Bloomberg said that New York Times covered it.
So would you expect this to have any legs? What do you think will happen over the next days?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay. All right. Okay. So let's go on to number two.
You know how Elon responded.
What did Elon say?
So in the Oval Office, he was thanked by Trump, which was kind of a slap in the face to the New York Times, who said to the Wall Street Journal, who says there's a schism between them.
Right.
You just mustn't believe. And they were I mean, they were buddy buddy they were throwing compliments backwards and
Right.
forwards. Trump gave him a gold key of the White House,
Right.
quote unquote, and said that he's welcome anytime, and Elon said thank you, and he made a little speech, and he said he'll be back, he'll be friend and advisor to President Trump. And then somebody did ask him about the report in the New York Times, which I hadn't seen at that point or hadn't heard of at that point. He said, "The New York Times? You mean that rag that carried the Russia, Russia, Russia story?" Next question,
Right.
So he kind of just batted it down. Let's see what Bloomberg said. Bloomberg. Yeah, it was front center. Well, it's fallen off already. It's yesterday's story already. Most lobbies, Washington. I mean, it's all. I mean, what I read was that Bloomberg was quoting the New York Times.
Okay. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
in that same discussion with the president in the end of his specific appointment, they also Trump also said, well, something to the effect of Elon or Tesla already makes their U.S. cars almost 100% in the United States. But he went on to say they need to make all the parts in the United States. So again, this was
That's not how it went down.
oh, okay. How did you hear it?
I was listening to the speech. He
Right.
said that all companies should make all the parts in the US. He talked about one part coming from Canada, one part coming from China, part coming from Mexico. He said, not like Tesla, they make, almost all their parts from that's what he said. And he never said they had to do that. He said all US automakers have to make all the parts in the United States.
I got
That's
it. Okay.
yeah.
So he didn't. Okay. So he didn't. Yeah, I guess I need to go back and actually listen to that thing in the
He
original.
didn't pick on Tesla. In fact, he exempted Tesla.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So the positive news should have been the end of his work at Doge. Dan Ives, when asked about that before the call, Dan says he was asked, did Dan Ives think that this could be a sell on the news situation where his actual ending his relationship with Doge on a formal basis was a sell the news deal? That made no sense to me at all. Did that make any sense to you that this would be?
Uh,
Okay. So the other thing I heard, but I wasn't able to track it down, and I was hoping maybe you were able to track it down, was that the next, obviously, a very, very big step is getting the.
yeah, I'm looking at Bloomberg. I've got the May 30th story on Bloomberg, which
Okay. Okay.
I have to share with you. Which
I would have to give you permission, I guess. There you go. There you go.
um, yeah, so should be very clear now.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so it is definitely originated with the New York Times, not with Bloomberg.
Oh, okay. All right.
Rick Clough updated 11:37. Yeah, usual stuff. Yeah, I wouldn't take any. I wouldn't take any notice of it at all. I wouldn't worry about it.
All right. And then the other thing I was just going to mention was there was some conversation. I couldn't track this one down either, but there was some conversation about the national approval from the Department of Transportation for the autonomous ride hail. Did you get any flavor?
There was a story that carried it, and there was nothing update. There's nothing new
Nothing.
in that at all. Yeah, it
Okay.
was also carried in Bloomberg, but no new updates. I would have opened it if there was such.
Okay. Sawyer Merritt then had this. He says Morgan Stanley analyst Adam Jonas said that during his presentation last week to around 200 investors in Japan, he began by asking for a show of hands from anyone who owned a significant amount of Tesla stock, and not a single hand was raised. He repeated the question, encouraging the audience to speak up in case he had missed someone, but the room remained silent. Adam Jonas says, we believe the challenges facing Tesla's current business are widely reported and well known, while the opportunities for the future business are potentially greatly underestimated. So, what did you think about Adam Jonas's comments?
Well, he's right. He's right. I mean, he's 100% right. I'm following Adam Jonas now. I am getting his material,
Oh,
and I must say that he's very solidly. I mean, he has raised the issue of the challenge from China.
hmm
Is that China are ahead in the mechanics of the robot now. They're far ahead than of the US. Says Tesla's going to have to step up. But he has very strong confidence, very high level of confidence in Tesla. And I can prepare some extracts from that for the future. But in general, I see very strong support. It's interesting that, not interesting, it's to be expected that the Japanese are not very big investors in Tesla. Tesla, they're a threat to the Japanese automakers.
oh, sure. So there could be some nationalism that's involved in their decision not to be participating.
It's not only nationalism, it's also attention. They probably all have Toyota stock, and possibly one or two other manufacturers, and certainly some of the suppliers. So, you know, uh, Tesla's so out of their focus area. And if you look at Tesla as an auto company, which most people in Japan would do, you're not going to invest into it as an auto company.
Right, right, right. Gotcha. I think in general, though, I think we would agree that we don't have as much of the investing heavyweights in the Tesla product as probably should be given the opportunity that's ahead.
No, I would disagree. BlackRock, Vanguard, these are huge and staunch investors, what's the other one? I forget. Anyway, look, the institutional investors hold about $500 billion of Tesla stock. That's not bad going. I mean,
Right.
because Tesla is not a stock that an investor in S&P is likely to invest in. Why? I mean, for the very reason that Gary can't bring himself to buy and hold that stock, simply because it does not fit in. It is more a startup. It is more a VC type investment because it's all based upon futures that are extremely difficult to quantify with any degree of accuracy or confidence.
Yep.
And it's run by an entrepreneur that is prepared to change on a dime. He turned this company from a startup into an AI, embodied AI play.
Right.
And he made that decision against the will and judgment of his management.
Right.
And he forced it upon them. So we're dealing with a company that is run like a VC financed startup operation, much like he runs SpaceX.
Sure.
And so the valuation criteria for that company is very different from the valuation criteria that a Wall Street investment company would make on behalf of its investors. So I don't think that it's out of line. I mean, if you look at the institutional holdings in Tesla, it's remarkably strong and fairly consistent and fairly stable.
Okay. All right. We have the economy today. I mean, like all the reports this week, pretty much consistently, everything was positive, excellent. This today was particularly good with the PCE showing people were making more money. They were making money way beyond the inflation rate, which was almost zero.
Almost 2%.
I'm sorry, yeah, 2% year over, I mean, month over month and 2.5 year over year, but I'm saying month over month, it was 0.1. I mean,
close to zero, yeah.
Which is where it's been for the last three. And then you have people making money at the 7% level, 8% level on an annualized basis, like 0.7, I think it was, and not spending it. So they're only spending at the 0.2% level. And so what are they doing with it? They're saving. Now, to me, that's Goldilocks. That's about as good as you could ask for. And yet the market was down most of the day. In fact, I think ended down by a tiny bit. But what do you think's going on? Is it all about the bonds? Is it all about the fear of the tariffs and the bonds? Is that just keep
it's uncertainty.
Uncertainty? Okay.
Principal issue in the market today is uncertainty. Are the bonds going to tank? Is the budget going to pass? If it passes, is the Doge savings going to be there? Will the tax cuts be real? What's going to happen with these tariffs? Is there going to be, is the war in Ukraine going to settle? I mean, the number of the amount, and there's a war in Israel. So the level of uncertainty and the degree of change in the change in the administration and the constant battle with the courts. I think that the level of uncertainty engendered by the number of court cases and the uncertainty about which court case is this and when is this going to happen, it's very high. So you've got the unpredictability of Trump.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the segment of the population that is highly, highly, highly opposed to Trump.
Mm-hmm.
They have this Trump derangement syndrome. And then you've got this uncertainty engendered by the bonds, the huge debt we have. So I think uncertainty is at a peak, and we're going through a massive revolution in AI.
Right, right.
And the level of uncertainty that brings is kind of layered upon us. So these are times that really try men's soul. They really are. But there are always great opportunities in these times. Great opportunities.
So the investing class, of course, the VIX today is around 19. The investing class you are asserting is feeling this uncertainty, which is why they're not more invested than they might otherwise be. And yet the consumer, all of a sudden, the consumer confidence, the consumer sentiment reports both in a positive direction, directionally positive. We had the right track, wrong track crossed 50% for the first time in history. So 50% of the population in the United States thinks we're on the right track. You got President Trump's numbers at 53% of the folks think he's doing a good job. All of that would seem to bode well in terms of consumer spending in the future, in terms of the way people are feeling about how things are going.
Yeah.
So all that. So I realize I said it the other day, maybe to you, might have been on Wednesday. We talked about this, that the S&P is stretched, so the numbers are not that horrible in terms of the PE for the S&P, but I guess other than bonds, I just don't understand where the pessimism is coming from.
Well, the pessimism is coming from the 47% of people who are opposed to Trump,
Yeah, okay.
of which there is a very large percentage, whether it's 30%, 40%, 50%, I don't know,
Yeah.
who are not only opposed to Trump, but vehemently opposed to Trump
Right.
and prepared to go to extraordinary measures to oppose him. In some cases, illegal measures, and in other cases, what we would call extreme measures. So that does not bode well from a calm financial situation. And then, on top of, we talk about the bonds, the interest rate on the 30-year being above 5% being a very serious problem. But that's not actually the underlying problem. The underlying problem is this massive debt and the seeming, climb in the debt to forever.
Right.
And I think that, that tends to overlay everything. So there is plenty of reasons. I mean, look, Randy, let's face it, you're a rather optimistic guy. I mean, you always will find the pony. You're my pony man, and and everything you cited is correct, but it's the pony.
Right. Right. Okay, so let's talk about the non-pony. I'm curious to know what you think about this. So somebody brought it up again on one of the CNBC shows or someplace, but it's been on my mind, probably been on your mind for weeks. Okay, so I'm president of the United States. I make a decision. As soon as I make the decision, I get sued in one or more district courts.
That's what I'm telling you.
Yeah, so I can't make a decision because every decision I make is automatically going to get sued, and then there's going to be an injunction, temporary injunction, blah, 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 and then it's got to work its way through the courts. It feels as if this is not sustainable
Well, yes,
as a method. Yeah.
It's not, and Trump really, talked about it today. He said it in as many words as you've expressed it. And I do think this. He's consistently having, he's ultimately having success.
Hmm.
And so I think that it's going to fall off. Now, there are two possible scenarios. The one is it does taper off and people get used to, him or allowing him to make those orders.
Right.
The problem with that is if he's followed by a Democratic
Hmm.
president, all of that could be reversed by exactly the same method by which he does it. So it's not ideal. Ideal was, to get this stuff through Congress. They're having a hell of a hard time doing that. On the other hand, I do think that the courts have been deferential to him,
Hmm.
not the lower courts, but and not the appeal court in Washington, but many of the circuit appeal courts, but more importantly, the Supreme Court has been quite cooperative in hearing things on an emergency basis, overriding the district courts. Now, whether this will finally resolve by having Congress pass a bill that, limits the district courts to their district. I don't think it's going to happen unless and until a ruling party has 60 votes in the Senate. So it may just have to be worked through at the Supreme Court level. I wish the Supreme Court would actually do some sort of finding on the issue of the district courts. It just doesn't seem to be a sustainable situation when we've become so driven by court action as a society because of the schism.
Yeah. Yeah.
That it doesn't seem sustainable to continue this district court having, power over the entire country.
Exactly. Exactly. On the good note, back to the good news, back to finding the ponies. Congress is now promising a lot of rescission legislation. Speaker Johnson said that.
Congress, or yeah, some in Congress. So because it's got to get through the Senate as well. I mean, I think that Senator Johnson made a very powerful case. I don't know if you heard him on All In, and I think there was an All In interview of
Yes,
Senator
yes,
Johnson. It was an amazing interview. I think that has power
yes.
because I think they must be feeling the pressure. I hope they're feeling the pressure because nothing would do this country better than having, a rescission bill driven by Doge
Mhm.
and visited frequently as Doge finds more stuff.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing maybe is that this will be a series of rescission bills that will be specific to each department or each type of rescission that's being made. And I think that's a really good way to go. Uh,
Here's the problem. Here's the problem, Randy.
okay, yeah.
I think a rescission bill requires 60 votes in the Senate.
No, only 51.
Are you sure of that?
Yes, yes. Saw several sources yesterday.
Okay, that's very encouraging if that is true. I thought the reason Johnson was putting his foot down was that he thought if it's not in this omnibus bill, he wouldn't be able to get it in. But I can check that with Grok.
Yeah, so to me it looked like I like it. I like it from a governance standpoint. There's obviously two things that we look at. We look at something like this rescission from the standpoint of will it work? Will it get the votes? And then number two is it good from a governance standpoint? And putting them through one at a time for different issues, I think is the best for governance, for transparency, for the public to see what's going on. Even though a second big, beautiful rescission bill might be the easier way to get it done. I'm not sure.
I mean, rescission needs to become a standard, and a rescission, and in fact, it shouldn't be. So rescission bills required by the president are subject to an expedited procedure and require only a simple majority with the vice president's tie-breaking vote in both the House and the Senate. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, then I'm less troubled by the fact that there won't be a recession in this omnibus bill. And so hopefully that will be a good thing.
So with that, with those rescission bills starting to make their way over to the House or the Senate, and with the Senate probably going to make some kind of a statement with their own version starting next week when they get back into session. Do you think President Trump right now has the power, because he's at the peak of his power? Do you think he has the power to make sure this budget deal gets done one way or the other before 4th of July?
I would hope so. I'm not, I just don't know enough about the politics of it. I just don't know enough about the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
But I would hope so.
Yeah. We would all hope so. All right. So, of course, on everybody's mind right now is the robotaxi rollout.
If we get to the robotaxi,
Sure.
I want to have one word.
Yes.
From a political perspective.
Yep.
I watched the interview between Barry Weiss of the Free Press and these reporters that wrote the book on
Biden.
on Biden's mental state.
Right.
One was the guy from CNN.
Yeah, Tapper. Jake Tapper.
Yep.
And the Axios guy.
And the other is a guy from Axios. I think everybody should listen to that. Everybody. Because particularly the Democrats that voted for him and that were supportive of him and that believed what they were being told by the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and all the other, the Washington Post in particular. Because in my view, everybody surrounding Biden in the White House committed treason. In my view, they should be tried criminally. And there's no doubt in my mind they did commit criminal acts. And there's further no doubt in my mind that any bill or order or document signed by Biden is not really valid or legal. I think he was not of sound mind and body at the time he either signed them or they were caused to be signed by a signature machine.
Right.
And I don't think that they can provide reasonable proof that he was aware of what the signature machine was signing or not signing.
Right.
You know, right now it's being treated as a political thing, and you know, people are saying it's a bad thing, or they don't believe it, or they believe it, or whatever. I think it was a criminal act. I think it's about as criminal an act as you commit. Anyway,
I mean, you could take it a different way. You could say, as opposed to being senile, you could say, oh, they had him locked up in his room. You know, he was perfect, sound body and mind, but his handlers locked him up in his bedroom for 4 years, and they just did whatever they wanted to. I mean, it's treason is a good way of saying it. I think the other way some people are saying it is it was the worst, the biggest, criminal act in history in terms of.
Well, I'm saying it's literally treason.
Treason, yeah.
I mean, you could call it fraud,
right?
But I think it rises above that. I mean, they were acting. They were in control.
Right.
President, and they were acting with presidential powers.
Right.
And you know that I don't know what the technical terms are for doing that,
Hmm.
but man, there is no doubt at all that what was going on there was criminal. It was done with criminal intent.
Sure, absolutely, 100%. Yep, yep, agree. So, all right, so back to Robotaxi. You and I just talked 2 days ago, but
Yeah.
anything in the 2 days since, or anything else in terms of just your mental thoughts about this rollout and what? So I keep, I guess it was it might have been Jonas who was the first person to actually agree with me today, um, saying that he sees this as kind of a constant catalyst. That as it's rolling out every week, we're going to be looking at the next level of the rollout, the next how many cars are going out, how many all the data that will be coming out of this in terms of the number of cars, the number of miles driven, et cetera. And then eventually there'll be a second city and a third city, so that as this rolls out over months, you're going to be almost having a constant catalyst in front of you.
So I would point you to a set of posts, or a post by a lady by the name of Du Du Duon Du Du Duon. Wait, I've got to find her.
Okay.
I, I will find her quickly. Um, she is an analyst with Altimeter,
Okay.
and I will tell you, she does an incredible job of breaking down what they're going to have to do to, you know, to make it work. And she also analyzes, I'm trying to find it while we talk. Um, Frida Duan, Duan, like the battery person.
Okay.
And she's at Frida Duan, at FREDA DUAN.
Okay.
And I will tell you that she does a very, very analytic job, and you would think that she would. This is her.
Hmm.
And she writes a post called Mid-Year Fact Check on Self-Driving and Some Reflections. Really great analysis. I'm
Cool.
following her now. Um, so I strongly recommend her.
Hmm.
She does a great job, and she gives a real sense of what it's going to take, where Waymo are, what they're doing, where the other potential competitors are and what they're doing, and what it's going to take for Tesla to do. I must say, in reading her, it's probably the best overview of where all the players are that I've read so far. And she does include the Chinese.
Hmm.
Definitely gives the lie to our good friend Gary Black, in saying that when Tesla's got it, all the car companies going to have it. It's going to be table stakes. No, I don't think so. I I am very confident now that Tesla are in pole position, and I'm just hoping that there are no events
Yeah.
or serious in the early months. There are going to be serious injuries. There are going to be deaths. But I just hope that it doesn't happen in the first 6 months to a year as they're rolling out. But
Sure.
as I see the rate of rollout of um, Waymo, and she details it, she thinks that they're rolling out very well, by the way. But as I see the rate and the numbers of cars and so on, I am beginning to realize that this is a slam dunk if it goes the way we believe it's going to go.
Right. So somebody raised an interesting one a couple of days ago. Actually, it was Thacker, Meyer Thacker, and he says, where is Tesla going to get the infrastructure to manage these vehicles? And you and I have had this conversation. I think I was maybe one of the first ones to say that Tesla had a major moat because of the infrastructure that's in place. Because we have all these charging stations, we have all these service centers, we have all these
I was
I'm sorry?
I was,
You were the first. I'll
I
I'll
was the first one.
I'll give it to you, Larry.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I wrote that. Okay. I've been banging this drum for a while, and I said to Maya that Maya asked me to publish what I was going to talk about at I'm going to be in this debate
Oh,
with Gary Black. I think it's still, but next week we're going to have a debate about who's going to win the thing.
I see.
Waymo, Uber versus Tesla.
Right, right,
Waymo slash
right.
and Uber or Uber versus Tesla. And I did the work. I looked at, the totality of the Tesla infrastructure.
Uh-huh.
And I did actually write down I did actually post the Tesla infrastructure. But yeah, I mean, I've been banging that drum for a couple of weeks now. I mean, Tesla have got an extraordinary infrastructure. Not only that, they have, I think they're about the only vendor or potential vendor of all the car companies that have the infrastructure to do this, and they're certainly the only organization that has an infrastructure that could equal or even best that is the rental car companies, the Uber, the 𝐓𝐡𝐮𝐽 and so on. And they may play a role in it, and they may partner up with somebody, but their problem is the cost of vehicles. So there are two aspects to it. One is the cost of vehicles, and the other is so anyway. Being a manufacturer of electric cars, being a manufacturer of the least cost electric car, being a manufacturer of their own batteries, and now that they have the lowest cost batteries on the market, doing all of this and having the technology of, the inductive charging and having the infrastructure that we've detailed, together, it's going to be incredibly hard to beat. And not even to mention they don't have to do this mapping that takes like 3 to 6.
Yeah.
I think Ms. Duan figured out it's about a year process to do
Wow.
yeah, I think so. I can't remember that offhand. I need to look at that.
So Larry, my question is not whether they'll win, because again, sometime before or after you, I started making the argument that the infrastructure was a huge moat with regard to the other players. A massive moat. I mean, like an impossible to reach moat. But then when Meyer Thacker brought it up, I started thinking it through long term. And I'm okay. Elon says we'll have 1 million vehicles 18 months from now. And I divided it up and I said, okay, if you have to charge all those vehicles at night and you're going to charge them for 30 minutes average, that would be 500,000 hours of charging each night. There's 30,000 charging posts in the United States. No, I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah, you can't look at those charging posts because I don't think that's the infrastructure they're going to be using.
Oh,
I think they're going to be using AC charging, using the charger that the average Joe buys, the AC charger, the 45, because they don't need fast charging. Fast charging, a DC fast charger actually depletes the battery over time.
right.
They're going to do AC charging using, the home chargers, which is what they have. These are the posts that they have in the back of their service centers.
Okay.
Every service center has got about 10 or 20 or 30 of those. 100 of those is going to be better than the fast chargers because the car is going to be at rest for 4 or 5 hours.
Right.
Right?
Right.
That period of time is when they'll do the fast chargers.
So you're going to need 1 million of those fast chargers if you got 1 million vehicles, because the 4 or 5
because you halve that.
have that.
Yeah, because you can do 2 a night.
Okay.
The other thing is you're not going to have 1 million vehicles. I mean, you're not going to have a million
Well,
vehicles.
that's what Elon said.
Well, in 3 years' time, you'll have a million vehicles,
He
and
said
you'll
next. Okay.
and you're not going to have a million charging posts. You're going to have, the inductive charges.
Okay. All right. Well, no, I know on the Robotax, on the cyber cabs, yeah, they'll have the inductive. But you're saying this is interesting. I didn't know about this aspect of using these other chargers. So you think bring them into the service centers or into the showroom areas, and they'll charge them.
No, no. The service centers, and then they're not in the showroom or in the front of the service center. They're in the back of the service
Right.
center where they charge all the cars.
So you think,
Right now, they're probably 20 posts or 30 posts, but they can build out 100 posts there because that's where the cars are going to have to sleep at night.
okay, okay. Only reason I'm bringing up the uh, uh, the showrooms is because if they needed more places to park them and didn't want to pay, they could also do them at the showrooms or at the
The showrooms are full.
collision centers or even the.
Collision center is like a service center. It's also got AC charges at the back.
Okay.
So, you have to balance this thing up, but it's at the collision centers that they have the room, not the collision center, sorry, it's at the service and collision centers that they have the room. Now, they're going to have, they're going to have to think about expanding them or extending them, but that they have got time to do because they've got what amounts to a fairly good start right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. Okay. Well, that's very, very helpful. Okay. Anything else happening with the robotaxi rollout that I'm not thinking about?
Oh man, a whole lot. They're going to have to clean them robotically, so they're going to have to drive to the robot themselves. Then the robot has to clean them. Then they have to drive to the charger themselves. Ultimately, with the inductive charging, they will drive and then
Yeah.
charge themselves. But they'll need some attendant there once they hit the charging thing to plug it in. Um, so there's a lot to do to build up towards it. But the point is, they can expand their infrastructure over time because they've got the infrastructure to start with to get each center going.
Mhm.
But let me tell you that there's a piece of the infrastructure that's very important that we all forget about, and that's the management structure.
Right.
Every one of these centers in every town that they have centers, and they have 200 in the United States, they have a management structure.
Right.
They have somebody, I mean, I've met many of them and I've spoken to many of them. They're people who are, very accomplished, very part of the Tesla method. And, they've had to expand their service centers, they've had to put collision centers, they've had to expand their showrooms. So they're very, very familiar with both managing the cars, managing the people, but also expanding it so that none of this has to be invented.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Very cool. The numbers, Larry, turned out this way. We've got Tesla trying to buy some of it back here in the after hours, up 0.24% after being down 3.34% today. I still have plenty of time. Did you know I moved my goalpost, Larry? My all-time, I moved it well because the date of the rollout's on the 12th, not the
Yes, to move it back, yeah.
so now I get till the end of June to get to all-time high.
You may have to shift that again, but okay.
Okay. So then we've got Dow finished in the green, managed to get into the green by 0.13%, NASDAQ down 0.32, S&P down 0.01, but even Nvidia was down almost 3% today. I guess
Yeah.
that had to do with some of the tariff chatter later in the day.
See, this is the lesson. I bought those calls on Nvidia,
Right.
sold them the day before the earnings.
Recall. Yeah.
Yeah, and somebody said to me, "Yeah, you see, you sold. Look, it's up like X%." I said, "Okay, I'm very happy. I am very happy. You cannot go broke taking a profit."
Right.
And today they fell. So I'm not a genius. I just stick to what I know to do. If I make a mistake, I get out. If I don't want that last dollar of profit.
That you're okay with not getting the last dollar. Yeah. Okay. So we've got the bonds, Larry, of course, the thing that we talk about all the time. At least we got another trim there, 2.6 basis points down to 4.398. So let's call it 4.4. That's directionally good. Jamie Dimon said today he thinks we might be going back to 5 on the 10-year. I commented in my earlier video this morning that, 5% isn't really that high, but it's nuts if we stay at 1% or 2% inflation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what Larry said. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I agree. I mean, who knows? It's really hard in this uncertain time to predict what's going to happen. I mean,
Right.
we're in the midst of a couple of fighting wars we're trying to resolve. We're in the midst of a tariff war, which who knows where it's going to end. And we don't have a tax bill. We don't have, sorry, we don't have a budget yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so these are vast uncertainties. So you can make any prediction you like, and I'd have to say, yeah, that's
Okay. So
that's fine.
actually, you kind of made an interesting point. We've talked about 30-day periods before, but maybe the next 30 to 45 days is going to be maybe one of the most interesting in our investing lives.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible.
Yeah.
More interesting was, March 2009,
Yeah.
after the crash in 2008, when
Yeah.
suddenly the market rose by like 1,200 points in a day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, all right. Well, oil. So the only thing that kept the PCE from being even better was that energy prices were up a bit because grocery prices were down, but we've got energy prices staying nice and low, with oil $60.79, natural gas $3.46. I mean, that's pretty darn good. So the next PCE report, I don't know what's going to. I can't see what could happen between now and the next PCE that would cause it to go significantly up from where it is now.
Yeah,
I mean, tariffs are not going to be impacting over the next 30 days, and if they did, it would be, a little tiny bit.
yeah.
Okay. All right. By the way, interesting also was Costco with 8% same store. That
Costco's amazing. It's an amazing company. Amazing company. And
yeah.
by the way, if you were to calculate the inflation rate
Yeah.
based on Costco hot dog, you'd have to say it's been flat for 20 years.
Yeah. And they're still not raising the price.
Yeah.
So, whoever they're buying from must feel a tremendous amount of pressure to find ways to keep it there. Gold a little lower today, Larry. So far you're being prescient again with regard to the gold price. We're sitting at under 3,300 now.
That's a good thing.
Yep, yep. Silver down a little bit too, down 1%.
I may be mistaken, but I'm very pleased to be mistaken.
And copper up just a tad, still staying in its trading range that we've been seeing it for a while. And that leaves Bitcoin 1147 negative for the day, so back down to under 105. So it's lost about 6% of its recent run up. Does it need a 50% retract? What do you call it? Does it have to go down?
Retrace.
Yeah,
Retrace.
retrace, yeah, down to the.
I think Bitcoin may be a little bit over its skis at this point. I think we're seeing a lot of sort of froth
Yeah, yeah,
in the market on Bitcoin. So I think it could retrace. It could go under 100,000. It could go down to 80, 90 in that range,
right.
because I think that it's got a little bit over its skis.
So we went from 70 to 111. So we might end up around 90. It might be some resistance at 90. All right. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all the news that's fit to print, Larry. And, I'm expecting you at some point, if I keep asking you for the wise saying of the day, if you're always going to have right off the top of your head, or whether you're going to start prepping, maybe even asking, Grok for a wise thing to say. But you got a piece of wisdom for me today?
Yeah, don't trust any wise sayings by anybody.
Do your own research, huh?
Research.
All right, Larry, as always, thank you for jumping on with us, and enjoy your weekend. And to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.